Hey everybody, welcome back to Race of History. Today we're going to get into the Sabaton history for Devil Dogs. We did this song yesterday. If you haven't heard it yet, I'll put the link to the reactions somewhere up here. Um, Also, later today, I'm going to try to get out the first part of a two-part series that's been sent to me on Discord. It's a history series, so there's two parts of it. I'm going to try to get the first part out later today. But we'll see, how it goes and how long it takes me to record and edit and all that. But we're gonna start with this U.S. Marines Devil Dog Sabaton history. Let's get into it.
I'm Indy Nidell,
And I'm Pat from Sabaton.
and this is Sabaton History. The U.S. Marines, who got the nickname Devil Dogs, made a serious impact towards the end of the First World War.
And we thought that Devil Dogs would be a perfect title for a Sabaton song, and the story was really good.
The U.S. Marines have been training for fighting the Great War in France since the U.S. declaration of war on Germany, April 6, 1917. They were a rather small force, not even 14,000 men strong. But the U.S. Marine Corps could look back on a long and proud history of service. The soldiers of land and sea had served U.S. interests overseas in places like the Philippines, Haiti, and even the coasts of China. But now, they were sent out to fight in a global war of which the U.S. had only been a passive spectator.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One, I actually wrote a paper in a military history class in college over the whole thing was over how incredibly unprepared for war the U.S. was when they declared war for World War One. They were absolutely not ready for it in terms or in comparison to the rest of the belligerents that had been fighting in World War One. The U.S. was woefully unprepared for it with big guns, shells, machine guns, manpower, literally everything. They were so unprepared for it. Now, they were able to ramp up relatively quickly, considering everything that was going on. But think about that. They declared war not being ready for war. In fact, so unprepared for war that you had sitting congressmen who, once the declaration of war was given, thought that they wouldn't actually be sending people over to fight. They thought that this was essentially going to be revamped efforts for economic help and supplies and use of the Navy, things like that. They thought there was no way the U.S. was going to send troops to Europe. They couldn't even do that if they wanted to. And so that's kind of a big deal. And that was the way I wrote my paper, was like, how do you declare war without the ability to actually prosecute a war, right? It's kind of bizarre. But also, I talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I talked about it in the comments under the video a little bit yesterday. But I think the reason that the early battles for the Marines in World War One kind of exploded and now are almost at like a mythological status within military history and the military itself, is because things that are new kind of have a certain excitement and buzz around them, right? And this was the U.S. Marines' introduction essentially onto the real world stage. Like, they had fought places before, most notably probably is the Philippines. But this is like the entire gaze of the world was on Europe for World War One, and this was the first time that the U.S. had been involved in this sort of like major conflict like this on the world stage. And so it was kind of the Marines like coming out party onto the world stage, right? And I think that's what led itself to some of the early battles of the Marines being, just immortalized in U.S. military history.
And their enemies were not poorly trained insurgents, but battle-hardened soldiers who'd seen years of active combat. To prepare themselves for modern war, the Marine Corps had included mostly French battle doctrines in their training, especially the new French emphasis on move and fire tactics, but with the Marine Corps preference of the smaller platoon formation. Equipped with rifles, light support artillery and machine guns, and rifle grenades, the Marines soon at least looked like a modern fighting force. And yes, before you comment, the American version of the show-shot light machine gun was terrible, but packing serious firepower while being as mobile as possible was of prime importance to the Marine Corps style of fighting. Anyhow, they did not simply just copy French doctrines, though, but put heavy emphasis on traditional soldiery as well. True to their credo, every Marine a rifleman, the Corps constantly honed its skills on the shooting range with the standard Springfield rifle and trained for close combat with the bayonet. Two skills that, while not left behind in the Great War, took a backseat to others in terms of general 1918 combat, where the machine gun and the hand grenade were thought of as the tools of the infantryman. In early 1918, the huge German spring offensives, the Kaiserschlacht, had smashed into and through the Allied lines in Belgium and France. And as their Operation Blücher kicked off in late May, the Germans were soon less than 50 miles from Paris. Panic spread, even though the offensive was pretty clearly running out of steam, and the Allies urged the Americans to send in reinforcements. The Marines, as part of the 2nd American Division, were among those first reinforcements that were judged ready to be sent into action. Operation Blücher had created a large salient across the Aisne River and into the French front lines from Rheims to Soissons, and the German army was trying to get a hold on strategically valuable positions from which to launch further attacks. Such a position was Belleau Wood. The first elements of the 5th Marine Regiment were rushed into the lines on June 2nd. They were greeted by exhausted French soldiers who suggested the Marines follow their retreat, to which Captain Lloyd Williams only retorted, "Retreat? Hell, we just got here." The French were by no means broken, but they had taken a hard hit, and the Americans had to take the defensive lead and dug in. The next day, as the Germans advanced from Belleau Wood over an open wheat field, they were unexpectedly met by highly accurate rifle fire and cut down in large numbers before hastily retreating back to the wood, probably wondering what the heck had just hit them. The German positions within Belleau Wood overlooked a wide area, and the small town of Belleau itself and its surroundings. And if an Allied counterattack was going to successfully eliminate the German salient and drive them back over the Aisne, their positions in Belleau Wood had to be taken. The next day, June 3rd, the Marines formed up in light order and marched over the same wheat field towards the woods to take it by storm. But
I talked about this yesterday. The fighting here is like really, really close together woodland and wide open wheat fields. Like it's not great, right? It's not great. And the German position is not in the wide open. And so you're having to, for either side, if you're the Germans going on the offensives or if you're the Allies going on the offensive here, one side or the other is going to have to cross these wide open spaces in order to get to the other side. And it's just not a good spot. It's just not a good spot. And the U.S. hadn't been fighting long enough to really understand the new style of warfare yet.
But as they marched into the open, they were suddenly hit by rifle and machine gun fire. Taking heavy casualties, the advance was quickly halted and the survivors pulled back. Clearly, the Americans were still green. They had to learn, and learn fast.
Yes. That's the name of the game for the U.S. in World War One, is just trying to get up to speed as fast as possible. Because all of the new weapons and doctrine and everything that had changed about warfare throughout World War One, the U.S. had not been a part of that militarily. And so they're trying to get caught up and get caught up as fast as possible. Because not being caught up is death, right? Like that's the alternative.
The Germans opposing them were veterans of the 4th Reserve Corps. Their commander was Major Josef Bischoff, a career soldier who had fought in the German Africa mission and was himself an experienced bushfighter. Although his men were suffering from exhaustion and chronic shortages of ammunition, shells, and food, he was determined to put his experience to good use in the thick of the woods, and carefully prepared his defenses. Thick undergrowth of bushes and large boulders were ideal hiding spots, and the steep ravines and hills slowed down every advance. So while it was really difficult to maintain an attacking formation, it also was to maintain a static line of defense. Belleau Wood was a place of small unit fighting. To break into Belleau Wood, the Marines had to take the high ground and the villages outside the woods first. While French artillery blasted Belleau Wood into an even more unmaneuverable maze, the men of the 5th Marines went into battle once again. On the 6th of June, they advanced towards the German positions on Hill 142, a major strongpoint that overlooked large parts of the woods. Again, they were met by entrenched machine guns and took heavy casualties in brutal fighting, especially after the German counterattack smashed into their advance. But the Marines prevailed. The hill was strewn with mutilated bodies from both sides, but it demonstrated that the Marines were not shaken by the effects of battle, which was good, because this was only a taste of what was yet to come. On the 11th, another major attack began. While other Marine companies attacked from the north and south, the main force was again ordered to advance over the open wheat field. This time, though, they had the help of a heavy ground fog that shrouded the advancing Marines from the eyes of the German outposts until they were already on top of them. Bayonets first, the Marines stormed into the German trench lines, attacking at close range. In those woods, the men were cut off. The heavy fog made flare guns ineffective, and telephone lines were already cut by the shelling. Only cold steel and personal bravery would prevail. The Americans were victorious in rolling up the forward defenses, but the Germans were not done yet. Vanishing in the bushes, they retreated to new defenses. The initial rush had cost the Marines dearly, and during the night, they were suddenly hit by 7,000 mustard gas shells, saturating their surroundings with deadly toxins. Still, they were determined to push on, NCOs leading the small platoons. Machine gun nests were stormed by all-or-nothing bayonet charges. Grenades exploded among trees and rocks, sending deadly splinters flying through the chaos of battle, and snipers targeted them from the treetops. But still, the Marines kept up their momentum. In fact, their aggressiveness was their best asset in those thick woods. More than once, they pushed through the German lines, then rolled up their defenses from the rear. In the spirit of Dan Daly, who just days before had spurred on his fellow Marines with the words, "Come on, you sons of bitches, do you want to live forever?" the Marines surged forwards. Few prisoners were taken in these days of the war, if any. It was merciless you or me, close-range fighting, with no room for quarter. After days of combat, the Germans had lost significant chunks of ground and finally broke on the evening of the 24th. They fled to their last fortified positions near the edge of the woods. The Marines, though, had to stop as well. Despite their success, the casualties had been high, and thousands of Marines were either dead or wounded, among them Captain Williams, who had succumbed to gas and shrapnel wounds. It was now up to the heavy artillery to soften up the enemy first before the final attack could drive them from the wood.
Okay, so we've talked about this on the Discord some, but I'm curious what people think. Was Germany able to win the war by the later stages. Did it matter whether the U.S. got involved or not, specifically for World War One? Was the war basically over, and it was just a matter of when, or could the Germans have still won the war? I'm curious what everybody thinks here. Like I said, we've talked about this and gone back and forth some on Discord, but I'm curious what everybody else thinks. Whether the U.S. involvement in the war was actually necessary to win the war or not.
After a night of heavy shelling, the Marines moved out. Again, they met heavy machine gun and sniper fire. But after a few hours of heavy fighting, the battle was pretty much over. Ever more exhausted and demoralized Germans surrendered without a fight, and whole companies were captured by single men. By midday, June 26, after 25 days of fighting, the last Germans in the wood were killed or captured. The report to American headquarters read, Wood's now U.S. Marine Corps entirely. The fighting for Belleau Wood became an instant PR hit in the American media. Ecstatic newspaper headlines ran on how the Marines saved Paris and of how the vicious devil dogs, as they were called, were feared by the Germans. Belleau Wood was in many ways the birthplace of the modern U.S. Marine Corps, and the name Devil Dog stuck after the heavy fighting of those June days in 1918. It is not entirely clear if, and in fact is even unlikely, that the name Devil Dogs, in German Teufelshunde, has its roots in the actual engagement in Belleau Wood. The term Teufelhunde had already appeared in the La Crosse Tribune in Wisconsin on April 27th. And other newspapers attributed the Devil Dog name to German pilots who apparently cursed the accuracy of American anti-aircraft batteries with that name. But whatever the case, the Marines had taken the fight to the enemy and were ready and willing to accept heavy casualties to achieve victory. So the fighting at Belleau Wood might as well have earned them the nickname Devil Dogs. The ferociousness of the attack was a real contributor that summer to the breakdown of the morale of the Germans, who had erroneously thought of the Americans as incompetent farmers and cowboys that did not know how to fight. They were very much mistaken. Okay, now Devil Dog.
That's actually interesting because I don't know if a cowboy is somebody that I would necessarily want to pick a fight with. Like, cowboys are known as roughnecks here in the modern day. You know, real cowboys. So, I don't know. That's interesting.
Dogs is from the new album, The Great War. Yep.
Yes. And one of the things that catched my attention while writing this song was the phrases that were supposedly said during this one. All right, you sons of bitches.
You want to live forever? Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
And we even put it into the song. So when Joachim was recording, he was like, and where do I sing this? Like, there are no melody for this.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, no, that's just a feeling that you do when in this part. And he's like, then I know.
Wait, can we hear that little bit?
Come on, you sons of bitches! Do you want to live forever?
There we go. Shockingly as it is, I mean, when I'm writing something, I try to zoom in on the maps and see what it is.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, this forest is so small.
Yeah.
How could such a significant, brutal fighting happen around this little area here?
Yeah, sure.
And then I looked at maps from World War I, and I realized that it was the same farms, the same fields.
A lot of places you think were big were not that big. I mean, the whole of Verdun, this monster battle. You can walk it. You can walk it in an afternoon. I mean, it's the size of central Stockholm. That's not that big, you know. Wow. For 800,000 people to lose their lives.
And Belleau Wood the same. I mean, you walk across it in a few minutes, not
like,
even half a day.
Like, wait. Where's the rest of it?
You can watch it. You can oversee the whole thing. We also even went, before we met in Verdun, you remember that?
Yeah, sure, we had fun.
stopped at Belleau Wood Memorial.
All right, okay.
we were driving, and this was actually not a stop planned. The publicist in France didn't even know that we wrote the song because everything was secret at this time. And then I was watching where we were, and I'm like, Belleau Wood? Okay. So I was telling the driver, we need to take a little bit of a detour. It's only gonna take us 20 minutes, and it's gonna be important for the rest of our lives. It means a lot when we actually get to a place where we sing about. So yeah.
And now, whose idea was the idea of having a song about devil dogs for the album? Was that yours or Joachim's? Or?
The song was written by me, and we thought about naming it in the original German title, like Teufelhunde. But Devil Dogs just sounds better.
Do you know it? But there is a snack cake called Devil Dogs in the States. It's chocolate and it's got cream on the inside. I don't know if it came after or before the Marines and stuff, but they're good though. They are good.
I have tried it.
Well, you'll be touring the States later this year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So bring us back a box of Devil Dogs.
I will
so
bring
we can
it back.
do like a review with the whole band. We can get Tommy and Chris and Hannes here,
and we all eat the Devil Dogs.
Well, since this is a song from the new album, can we hear another few seconds of that music? July 19th.
It really is a good song.
19th, you'll be able to hear this song and the other songs on the Great War, and that is it for Sabaton History for today. See you next time.
Okay, so that was Sabaton History for the song Devil Dogs. I said this yesterday, but it's for sure up there on, towards the top of the list as one of my favorite Sabaton songs. I really, really like this one. But yeah, the history of it is super interesting. I'm curious what you all think about this, especially about the U.S. involvement in the war and whether it was necessary or not to, for the overall win or not of the war. But as always, like, comment, subscribe. Help me keep building the channel over here. I'll put the link to the Discord down below. And I will see you all next time.